Welcome to another edition of the Insight250 Spotlight series, where we talk to leaders and innovators all around the world to understand the stories and the people behind the insights. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by one of the real legends of our industry, Jane Frost, CBE, the CEO of the MRS. Now, Jane, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
It's an honour to be here. Thank you.
Now, firstly, for our viewers all around the world, what's this CBE? What's a commander of the British Empire? That sounds something a little bit scary almost.
I think it probably sounds scarier for me than for anybody else if they think that I'm in command. No, it's. I was very privileged and honoured to receive this medal from the King, as now is, and it is for my services to government and charity. And it's the highest honour you can get without actually being made a dame, which of course I can't be a knight, but I could have been a dame. And I have to say it was one of the proudest moments of my life, because as an ex-seller of soap to the great unwashed, whoever thought you'd be in Buckingham Palace and meeting the King? It's absolutely marvellous.
Oh, well, congratulations, Jane. That's a real accolade and definitely and clearly one of the reasons as well why you're one of our legends of the Insight 250. But Jane, how did you get into Insights?
Insights is a passion of mine, but I'm not technically anyone what anyone could call a researcher. I am actually the client's client. I'm a CMO by training, so I sold soap to the great unwashed and then walked out to the Gulf to sell literally oil back to the Arabs. And then after founding the branding function in Shell International, I joined the BBC as CMO. Then made a lot of what I'm very proud of, advertising. You can see some of the stuff behind me before joining government. So the key to all of that, though, when people look very confused about my career, is that I do customer-based change. And you can tell from that the absolute bedrock of creating change based on customer is understanding your customer. A lot of my organizations didn't think much about customers at all, whether you call them customers, consumers, users, but it's the same thing. They didn't think about them at all, and therefore you need your evidence to prove to the CEO and more fundamentally the CFO that you need to invest in change. And it's a process of opening people's eyes, first getting them to understand with their head that there is an issue or a need to change, and then understanding with their heart that there is a need to change. And it's a continuum. This generally goes with data. This generally goes with really, really brilliant qualitative.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd love that, and I mean, evidence is so important, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But as someone really close to the whole insights arena globally, and most importantly, I think as a user of that for many years in many companies and in government, I mean, how do you see the role of insights evolving in the years ahead?
I think it's actually getting more important. It gets more important the more difficult life gets and the more interpretation of life that you need to be in business or be in government. But I also think that there's a lot of change going on, but the big, blinding new product that's going to revolutionize the world, I think most of those have been discovered. And we're now talking about competitive change at the margins of people's behavior. If you really don't understand those things, then you're going to get left behind. If you don't understand the huge numbers of people who've been under-researched and underrepresented for a long time, you're missing an opportunity. And if you really don't understand consumers' behaviors, then you're going to invest a huge amount of money in your product, in doing things that actually they don't feel very necessary. And there's a big case study of a particular telco who spent a fortune on advertising, basically saying, "Stupid customer, why can't you use your phone better?" Actually, they should have acknowledged that most people use their phones mostly to communicate. They don't need to do an Open University degree on it. And therefore, you need to be designing products for those people and for their lives, not for some techies wet dream, to be honest. And unfortunately, I I would encourage more people in the UX CX space to be much more rigorous about their research, because they need to be talking to idiots like me who are too busy to work it out and go and look on the online and forget what I said and don't forget my password. I'm the sort of person who is more generally spending money. And if it's not designed for me, then forget it, because I'm not going to be encouraging other people to use it or using it myself.
Mm. That's true. Now, look, you've mentioned something really important there: diversity and inclusion, and nobody wants to be left behind. Those two things. What's the Market Research Society, the MRS, doing about that? Are you doing things in the diversity and inclusion space? I believe there's a pledge, I believe.
There is a pledge, but I think it starts with something much more fundamental. For years, MRS has been in the forefront of issuing guidance on issues like gender identification, vulnerability, and other aspects of inclusion. And we've done that before almost, and in fact, before anyone else in the world. And we've been issuing the guidance to help the sector improve. But taking a step back, it is clear that as a whole, although we are very well represented by women in the sector, they're not at the highest levels. There's still a pay disparity. We are not by any means well represented with people from minority ethnic backgrounds or from people with different educational backgrounds. And if we are going to be the window on the world that our clients are paying us to be, and which makes our money and gives us our salaries, then we must get better at that. Now, that's the practical thing, Crispin. The moral thing is, morally, as somebody who is an insights or claims to be an insights professional, why wouldn't you be improving what you do in this area, internally in terms of who you employ, externally in terms of ensuring you're reaching the right people?
Mm. No, I couldn't agree more, Jane. And look, clearly you and the MRS are at the forefront of leading and innovating in the D&I space and many other areas. But what's your top tip to other people in the profession to be a leader or an innovator?
I was thinking about this, and you read obviously in on your Twitter, and I refuse to call it X. I'm really sorry. X is for the X product that I don't use anymore. Twitter, all these wonderful words of wisdom, and I don't think I'm that wise, but I would sort of have three tips. What the first is, stay curious, and there is absolutely no way in a career that has been weirder than most. When you think about, I've been helping the Royal Navy in the Gulf, I've been with the judges, and I have obviously sold Purcell back to people who need it. Everything you see will apply somewhere, will teach you or give you an idea about something else. I really, really, really do encourage people to ensure that they're not just letting their staff go to research events. Send them out to do something weird. They will learn from everything, and you will learn from everything. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is, nothing good ever came from having an ecology formed of only one species. You know, that the old forest, which is only fir trees because that's good for wood, not good for ecology. You need possibly to be the least clever person in your team. What you need to be good at is allowing the genius of the people around you to come free and to promote that. And the third thing I would say is that we need to remember, and this is something that is very domestic and came from discovering what the state of my kitchen when I came back from holiday. You can never change the cleanliness of a kitchen by using a greasy old tea towel. Please, please just remember that doing the same old thing all the time is not going to get you a different answer. You need to be brave enough to take chances, but you need even more to to be brave enough to support your people in taking chances.
Yeah, oh, I love that example. I think, isn't that formally the definition of stupidity, to do the same thing again the same way and expect a different result? So I think, shaking it up is so important. And I love all the curiosity word and things you're talking about. But now I said we'd come back to evidence, and evidence is something I'm passionate about. I've been involved with the MRS for many years, as have you, and I know that the MRS have this almost as a tagline: evidence matters. So tell us, Jane, what's all this about?
Well, thank you for asking, because sometimes I think it should be self-evident. Why would you make huge multi-billion pound decisions based on your own feelings and people you know in the pub? Um, and increasingly, you look at the news, and particularly the news to do with domestic policy and everything else, and you go, surely the evidence says something else. What was the evidence that made you take that decision? And frequently, unfortunately, there was no evidence, but that's maybe me being cynical. But I can give you two examples of personally why it matters, um, in the qualitative space and in the quantitative space. In the qualitative space, um, and this is an example driven from my experience in the Gulf, where we needed to find a way of convincing the finance people to let us create some advertising. The product was doing very well, so why would you want to advertise, was the CFO's comment. Well, the product was doing well, but there were increasing numbers of competitors coming in. And the commitment I made was that they would give me the money if I could find other people who would buy the advertising. And by looking hard at the way people use engine oil in the Gulf, and we are talking something as dull as engine oil, you notice when you do qualitative that they actually make this symbol, the sort of rubbing fingers symbol, when they're talking about engine oil. It's the same thing they make when they're talking about rich and good food. And it obviously shows how important um, engine oil is to their survival, because they have a truck, they need to run it through the Gulf. Uh, but actually, we shouldn't be encouraging people to feel their engine oil. It's not a good idea. But there is something in using that mnemonic. And I discovered that there are a couple of countries in South Africa where the approach to describing quality is exactly the same. So we made an ad that was okay, and it worked very well in Saudi Arabia, and we also got the money from Uruguay and Paraguay to make it as well. So just to show you that you can actually make money from doing really good qualitative research. And I think in the quantitative sphere, if you talk about, and this is a government example, if you talk about things like revenue and customs, and we're talking about people who are driven by data points, they're driven by hundreds of years of how they have done things, working with the CFO to create a match between quantitative research, how people are experiencing the revenue and custom system, and a match with how internally we are operating the system, showed us several points almost immediately where millions and millions of pounds could be taken out of the process, because they were creating problems with customers, but they were costing the organization money. And that spurs change. You prove to people that they can save money. It's amazing how much money they give you to help them save money in the future. I think I have more examples which actually show the power of research and evidence in changing people's minds, and more in making them proselytize for you. And I think I would finish by saying people will read stories and go, yes, I agree with you. Show them something, and they are likely to cry and actually commit to you emotionally as well. So, very good tip from me is, if you've got data, find a way of humanizing it and find a way of communicating what it means to people, and you will have more people on your side than you care to think about.
Jane, I mean, that is absolutely fascinating and fantastic. And I love hearing about the humanizing research and getting that across to people, but also the commercial lens that you look at things through, showing how if they're making money or saving money, then they will get the budgets to do these things. It's so important. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing those things with us. It's really appreciated.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, because I genuinely believe that research, insight, and evidence have been key to my career. I wouldn't have done what I have without some brilliant people in the research sector, and I owe them all a lot. And I'm really glad to be paying back in a really small way. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you. And look, for all of our viewers, if you want to hear more from Jane, we've had a whole discussion, a whole interview, and the whole of that piece, which talks a lot about evidence and some more great examples and case studies from Jane, is in Research World. You can find that on insight250.com. But for now, that wraps up another episode of the Insight 250 Spotlight series. A huge thank you again to Jane Frost, CBE, for joining us today. Do stay tuned for more episodes with more discoveries. And don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe. And until next time, keep innovating. Thank you very much.